There's so many different facets of your life and your career that I want to explore, but let's just stick right now for a little bit with marketing and marketing leadership. You're building a brand from the ground up at Carbon. Can you talk about some of the challenges involved in that and how you've seen the brand evolve since you took the helm as CMO?
I mean, it's amazing, because I remember when I was going to become the CMO of Carbon, at the time, nobody had heard of the company. And, you know, I mean, even things as simple and as basic as, like, we weren't even verified on Twitter or Instagram. I know, you know, from as simple and as basic as that to, you know, in cocktail conversations when I was like, oh, I'm, you know, leaving GE to go be the CMO of Carbon, people would be like, what's that? Mm-hmm. And I just think about today, you know, here I've been in my chair for almost 18 months, and it's like night and day. In fact, actually, as I'm talking to you right now, my CEO, Ellen Coleman, is on Fast Company with their editor-in-chief talking about how to lead in a time of crisis. So talk about a different scenario. And so for me, and that was actually what attracted me to Carbon. I remember I was looking at some really big jobs, and they were very tempting. But those companies, the brands are already made. Even if I was CMO, it would be nice for my ego and my resume. But the reality was, I'm not the one building those brands. And what attracted me to Carbon is that at the time when I joined Carbon, I was like, whoa, there's a lot of opportunity to go from being kind of relatively unknown to becoming known. And even in just 18 months, our brand has gone, you know, I mean, it's just been exponential what we've done. And of course, we're still not there yet. There's still a lot that we need to do, but I'm really proud of the work that we've done over the past 18 months.
So can you tell us a little bit about the company and then about your marketing strategy for the company, how you're trying to position it, what stories you want people telling about it, and some of the stories that you have had told about it, to kind of bring it to life for these folks a little bit more?
Absolutely. So Carbon is a 3D printing company. And, you know, for so long in the world, right, 3D printing technology has been around for about 3 decades. And there was a talk about how this technology would actually be used to manufacture real products. But it hadn't quite fulfilled its promise until Carbon came along. At Carbon, we are actually using 3D printing technology to manufacture real products, from football helmets to Adidas running shoes to parts on Ford vehicles. And it's truly amazing. To now, even during this time of coronavirus, COVID-19, producing face shields for our healthcare workers in local communities, and even nasopharyngeal swabs to increase testing capacity for COVID-19. So Carbon is really a 3D printing company that's used for manufacturing products. And you can use it for local production, very much like what we're seeing is actually critical and needed as we in this century and during this time. My marketing strategy for the company has really been focused on 3 key things. First of all, one, making sure people understand who we are, what we do, and why it matters, right? So it's like, who is Carbon? What do we do? Why does it matter? And for a while, you know, it was hard to get people to understand, why do I need to modernize my supply chain? Why do I need to modernize manufacturing? What could change? And, you know, over the past year or so, it's become a lot clearer the things that are needed. And I would just say COVID-19, I mean, it just really showed why and how we need to modernize our supply chain. And not just that, but even some of the disasters, earthquakes, different things that we've experienced over the sort of past 12 months. So my strategy has been just really, first of all, making sure people are clear on who we are, what we do, and why it matters. I would say the second piece is really making sure that we take, again, coming back to sort of my science and analytical roots, making sure that we approach marketing in a data-driven way. Now, it doesn't mean, you know, there's not room for creativity, but what I like to think of it as data-driven, inspired creativity. You know, I think when we have the right technology stack, when we understand, we're gathering data, analyzing data, we're able to make smarter decisions, allocate our resources in a much more responsible way. And so that's been a big push for me, has been around, you know, really having a data-driven approach to marketing. And then I'll say the third aspect of the strategy has really been around, brand and culture. I think your brand reflects your culture reflects your brand. And so it's really important, I think, as a company that, and of course, there's always the ideal that we want to be. And we won't, there are times when we're not where we want to be. And there's a lot of work we need to do. But I think being able to take a stake in the ground about the things that matter to us, for an example for us is sustainability. In the manufacturing space, right, we really care about our planet. We want to protect the planet. We want to be doing things in a sustainable way. And so that's really important to us. But thinking about things that are important to us as a company, as a business, what that means for the brand, and what role we should be playing in broader culture. So those are sort of the three broad areas that I'm using to sort of define our marketing strategy and really operating and leading my team.
You've talked already about marketing as marrying art and science, and then you just referenced again, data-driven creativity. Can you talk to us a little bit about a decision that you made related to marketing based on the data that you all were seeing?
Absolutely. So, an example would be actually one that we just made like 2 weeks ago. So we were doing some research with data based on things we were seeing with the designers and engineers that use our platform. And we were seeing that actually mechanical designers and engineers right now are a little bit underutilized, right? They're working from homes, which means they're not kind of in their tool, in their labs, doing more active product development. So many of them are feeling underutilized. So gathering that data was inspiring for us because I was like, oh, wow, sounds like it's a good time for us to launch a carbon design program. Like let these folks are underutilized. Let's get them learning a new skill, which obviously for us is how to design with DLS. Our technology is called digital light synthesis, so DLS. But let's get more people knowing about DLS, utilizing DLS to design products. And we launched that, and it's been really successful program. But that's just if we weren't collecting that, I say first party data is a party you don't want to miss. So if we weren't getting that first party data and understanding what actually matters to our audiences, we wouldn't have known that. And we wouldn't have been able to kind of launch this program and engage with because I always want to surprise and delight our customers, right? We don't want to put, right now, maybe they're not as interested in buying a printer because they're not even in the labs, but they are interested in learning. So what can we offer them and meet them at the point of where they are? And I think always thinking about how do I surprise and delight my customers. Can't really do that if you don't have data. At the best, you're doing what I would call an anecdotal assertion versus a data-driven, making a data-driven argument. And so I prefer for us to take a more data-driven approach. So that's an example that just happened actually very recently.
Mm-hmm. So you are not just an executive, you're actually an entrepreneur as well. And you've started at least one company. I think you've started a couple companies earlier in your career, but one was called Global Rewards. And in an interview, you referred to it as a fat startup. Can you explain what that means and also just sort of reflect on that whole experience of starting a company?
Yeah, so a fat startup is a startup you really don't ever want to do. It's a startup where you just throw a lot of money at something without having kind of gone through, I would call the lean process, which is the right way to start a company. I was fortunate, I was working in a great job. I had, resources, and I decided to put all of my money that I'd made and all my bonuses and everything to starting this company. But I didn't do it the right way. It wasn't like there was a problem I saw that I really wanted to solve. I mean, I guess maybe I saw the problem, but I didn't test it. Again, this comes to the data. I didn't validate the problem. I was like, a lot of people are on social media. How do I make sure that people get something in return for being on social? So the idea was that for the time you spend engaging on social, you're earning this like social currency. I like to think of myself as like cryptocurrency ahead of its time. Didn't quite work out that way. But, the idea was you would get social currency. and you would be able to translate that social currency into buying different goods and services. But the reality was, it was just and I like, that wasn't, people were already, it's like if I'm influential, I'm an influencer and I'm selling my specific product. It wasn't as interesting. It was also before Instagram. So it's almost like it was just a bad idea. And I hired an engineer, relocated this engineer to a new country. I was funding, it just was a disaster, and it all just came crashing down. And, but I learned a lot from that experience. And I think it's always interesting because whenever people talk about their careers, everyone just focuses on the positives, the highlights, all the good things. This was not good. It was really scary. I was really sad. I lost all of my money that I'd saved. And it actually was one of the things that pushed me to go get an MBA, because I just realized I'm a great marketer. I have really great ideas, but I want to be a great businesswoman. And I started to realize that there were just gaps in my knowledge, things I just didn't really know. I also didn't know that much about the technology space. And I was like, I want to be in Silicon Valley. And that was why I picked Stanford to go to get my MBA. But I failed, and it was a bummer, and it like sucked. The good thing was I didn't take money from anybody. So it was just my money that I lost. But still, it was really hard. And, it was actually a really tough period in my life. Like I hadn't failed in such a like really dramatic way. And it was a very dramatic situation. And so it was a time for kind of reflection and figuring out, okay, where do I go from here? But I like to talk about that because I think it's important for people to realize that your career is not a linear line. It's not just like succeed. I always tell my kids, it's kind of like a jungle gym. Sometimes you go down to go up, and sometimes you come down again, and it's okay. We just have to embrace the journey and learn from it.
Don't you feel like you emerged out of the ashes of that experience just bulletproof, right? Like you survived to live another day and fight another day, and you're tougher and stronger and wiser now.
I definitely think so. I really agree. And actually, when I think about my career and some of the acceleration I've had in my career, it was really, I think born in that period of failure, literally. Because it was after that I was like, okay, if I ever start something, it's going to be about something I know everything about. And, when I started my next company, New Bridges, a marketing and innovation consulting, I knew everything about that. Like I was just running my business. I knew what to do. I didn't raise any money. And I made money out of it. It was a profitable business. And I got some really amazing clients. And one of those clients ended up giving me my first C-level position. So it just kind of is an interesting journey. But I almost feel like I had to fail to succeed. I also maybe I would never have gone to Stanford. Then I wouldn't have met my husband. I just think about all these amazing things in my life that I wouldn't have had my kids. I could just go on and on, but like all these wonderful things that came as a result of that deep, immense failure. And I think that sometimes, we just have to, even when we're going through rough times or we make mistakes, or because I made a mistake, I made some bad choices and some really bad decisions, and I had to learn from them. And I think that it's okay, none of us want to fail. I'm not going to pretend and say failure is great. I always hate when people say that, because I'm like, it sucks. Failure sucks. It sucks. It's not great, but there's a lot that we can learn from it. And we're all going to fail at some point. So when we're going through that, we just take a deep breath, we dig in, we learn what are the lessons, and we make sure we don't make those. We're going to make other mistakes, but let's not make those same mistakes again.
Okay, so I have more questions for you, but we're already getting tons of questions from the audience here. And so I want to ask some of these. Sarah McCaslin asks, how did your team respond to COVID? And what was the moment you realized you needed to take action?
Well, almost from day one, this is the wonderful thing about being in an innovative company with, really, really, really smart people. From day one, our CEO, Ellen Coleman, who's just amazing. She's a female CEO, so really loving having that. But she was like, we got to take action. What are we going to do? How can we step up and help? Because very clearly, from the beginning, it was obvious that this pandemic was going to disrupt supply chain. And we immediately, all you had to do was just turn on the news or go on social media, it was clear that there was a medical supply shortage. So we were like, okay, you can try to do a lot of different things or you can focus. And so, a technical team got together and was like, where do we think we can make immediate action? And for us, it was two key areas. First, protect healthcare workers, right? Those are the people, and first responders. Those are the people on the front lines. And right now we're hearing in the news, they don't have what they need. We have got to fix that. And the second thing is testing. I mean, I will never forget, Nancy Pelosi was in front of a camera. She was like, the three things: testing, 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 right? Increasing testing capacity. So we were like, these are the two things that we're going to focus on. And then we looked at our technology and said, okay, what can we do? And then the team created a face shield design, and we actually open sourced it. So we put it on our website that anybody with an industrial 3D printer, I mean, obviously it's optimized for our carbon machines, but you don't have to have a carbon machine to print. And it's been amazing. And then we had a webinar with over 300 of our customers and partners around the world, explaining to them what we're doing to help and inviting them to be a part of it. And I'm telling you, it's been incredible. From the Netherlands all the way here to, the Bay Area. We're so many in the UK, helping the NHS. So many customers and partners have started to produce these face shields in their local areas. And then one of our customers, Adidas, even came with us and said, hey, there are underserved areas that don't even have the ability to purchase some of these. And so we've also been donating to underserved communities. And it has just been inspiring to see the work that we did there. And then around the nasopharyngeal swabs, we're not a medical device company, but one of our customers is. And so we were able to partner with them, help them to design a lattice swab that's been validated by Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, which is associated with the Harvard Medical School. And that swab is now being produced up to 1 million swabs a week and being given to healthcare organizations around the country. So those are the two areas that we focused on. And, there's other, like I know my alma mater, GE, working on ventilators. So it's been interesting to just see different private sector companies really step up and partner with the government officials and the general public to say, how can we step up and help?
That's awesome. Lauren French is asking, we're all in transition. So Dara, like your husband, William, many of the folks who are here right now are also veterans or military service members, and others are in career transition. And Lauren says, can you share with the group more about your mother's advice to purify your motives? She also says, P.S., is your jewelry 3D printed? It's awesome.
Unfortunately, this is just old-fashioned gold. It is not 3D printed. I should have worn 3D printed jewelry. I actually had told them they were going to make stuff for me, but COVID-19 happened, and so here we are. My husband is a veteran, so I have a great affinity for this community, and so thank you for your service to all the veterans on the line. Transition is hard. It's hard to sort of change and leave something familiar and go into something else. And it was actually my mother-in-law who used to say, and I remember the first time she said it, I hated it because, she's my mother-in-law. But as she said it more and more, I thought about it, and it's just something that stuck with me. And she actually passed away a few years ago, but it's something that continues to kind of guide me. And it was purify your motives. And that's really like, why are you doing what you're doing? It's just a more elegant, she's a very elegant lady, more elegant way of saying, why are you doing what you're doing? And I think asking yourself that question can help you make the right decisions. And I'll give an example. It's not the same thing as like transitioning from the military, but it's a transition I made that for me in my personal life was dramatic. So I'll share it with you. When I was in my 3rd trimester pregnant with my 2nd child, Johan, who's a joy. Hopefully he doesn't run in here. I was at Apple in a job that I loved with people that knew me, and I had the opportunity presented itself to go to GE in this C-level role. In fact, at first, I wasn't even sure that I was interested because it was like, I'm pregnant, like I'm in my 3rd trimester, this baby's gonna drop any minute, like who's gonna make a career change in their 3rd trimester? But I was encouraged by, I sit on the board of the Public Health Institute, and I was encouraged by one of my fellow board members, was like, you really should check this out because, Sue Siegel's a phenomenal leader. and, at the very least have a discussion. And I remember before I was going to have my first discussion with Sue, everybody told me, do not tell her that you are pregnant. She can't ask, it's illegal. Don't offer it, right? Just figure out where the conversation's going to go and, take it one step at a time. But that's just not me. I'm a very open person, and I just decided, I was like, you know what, like, I'm just going to be upfront. So we were talking in our first conversation, and, after we gone through a few minutes of conversation, and she started talking to me and being like, oh, I really want us to move this process. I said, hey, before we even get carried away, I just need to tell you, it's going to be 2 of us joining you. And she was like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, this isn't just a big burger. I know I'm wearing a loose dress at all. I wanted to give myself options in case I chicken out. But I'm in my 3rd trimester. And her face lit up. I mean, she was so happy for me. And in fact, it actually brought us closer because she had taken a really big job when she just had her 2nd child. So it was almost like, sharing it with her was actually the thing that connected us even on a deeper level. Until today, she's still a great mentor and friend of mine. And then, I decided, ultimately I got the job, and I decided to change. And taking a job, a C-level job, at that, in your 3rd trimester is hard. The reality is I didn't really have a maternity leave. That's I just couldn't. I didn't know this, and Sue didn't know this, but right after I took the job, we went through 3 CEOs at GE within the space of 12 months. It was crazy. And I was too senior. I couldn't delegate anything, I'm the CMO. I had to show up and do it wasn't like I was a manager on the team, as someone else, or a director, or even a VP on the team. And so I learned so much from that experience. And I bring it up to say, but I knew why I took the job. I took the job because ultimately it wasn't just the title and the position and the compensation and all of those things. I took the job because I was at a point where I wanted to move to the next level as a leader. And this was a job that had that scope and that responsibility. And I had a boss that I knew I was going to learn so much from. That's why I took the job. And so when GE stock went from 30 something to $7 and my options were out of the money, I was okay. And when I didn't have to take maternity leave and I was dealing with, and it was just the most chaotic time. It was challenging, but I was doing what I wanted to do. And I say that to say transition is never easy, but you take a clear-eyed risk. What is a clear-eyed risk? It's where you get as much data as you can, you strip away the uncertainty, and you make a decision with conviction. And even when you make your decision with conviction, it doesn't mean things are always going to go exactly how you want them to. Yes, Apple stock went up while GE stock went down. If you're doing the math, yeah, you're doing the math. But at the end of the day, I was where I was meant to be. And so I like to share that story because as you go through transition, there's so many different things, and each of you has your own different journey that you're on. But take a clear-eyed risk and then remember why you're doing what you're doing. And then when the waves come, which they will, and our waves all come in different forms, you're going to be okay. Because at the end of the day, you made the decision for the right reasons. And those right reasons will carry you through.
So I love that story. And I want to ask another one, and this one sort of pulls from, you've made a bunch of transitions in your life, personally, professionally, and everyone on the line right here, most of the folks on the line are also at the brink potentially of making a transition. It might be from the military, it might be from a different sector, it might be from an academic institution, it might be after a robust career in a different field and wanting to jump into tech. And so Chloe Matthews is asking, what skills do you look for in someone trying to pivot into a marketing career? How can we make ourselves more competitive? So for folks who don't have a classical marketing background, how can they potentially stand out in an interview process? And she wants you to know that she grew up in Warri and Lagos.
Oh, wow. Hey, oh my goodness. That's awesome. I love that. I love that. That's great. Well, good to see you, my fellow Lagosian. You know, I think there are really three key things I look for. I think one is curiosity, because I think that most people can learn a lot, right? You know, and if you're curious, you're going to learn faster, right? So you're going to come up the curve faster. So I always say, you know, this is and sometimes my colleagues don't enjoy it because I say it a lot, but I'm like, you have half-baked people looking for fully baked people. Good luck. I say that a lot because whenever people tell me they can't hit their diversity quota, or that's just my comment. And I'm sure all the women in the room, or if you're in a diverse, you know exactly what I mean by that. You know, we always have to work twice as hard. We have to be twice as good, right, as a lot of people. And I know that applies to in the veteran community. But if you're curious, you can come up to speed quickly. So I think being able to demonstrate intellectual curiosity is really important. Like, there's nothing that turns me off a candidate more than I spend time talking to you and I ask you, do you have a question? And you don't have a question. Like, I literally, like, if I ask you and you don't have a question, that's it. We're done. Like, there's almost nothing you can say that, you know, is going to convince me that you're right for the role, because curiosity is important. The second thing that is really important is creativity. And that's because in marketing, even it's always about drawing insights, using insights to channel new decisions, pushing the frontier. You know, marketing, we're really responsible for painting the future vision of the company and helping bring that future closer faster. And so even my operations, my director of marketing strategy and operations, he is creative. You know, it's like thinking creatively about how do we solve. Creativity is not just like, hey, okay, I know how to draw, you know, like it's more about how do you approach problems? How do you solve problems? You're not even thinking outside the box. For you, there is no box. And really creativity is very important to me. And then I think the third thing that I really look for is grit. You know, like at the end of the day, like if you don't have a traditional background, it's not going to be easy. You know, like there are going to be times where like you mess up. There are going to be times where you just made a bad decision. Are you resilient? Are you the kind of person that like, you know, you could pick yourself back up, let's keep going? Are you the kind of person that's able to put your hand up and say, oops, I made a mistake, guys, like, but I'm going to get us out of here. How do we figure it out? You know, are you that person? And so I think, you know, if you've got grit, you're creative and you're intellectually curious, you know, you can thrive in marketing, but not just in marketing, I think in almost any field. So those are really the three things that I look for in candidates.
Notice that none of that was conventional training in marketing, right? Like all of us could have this lens on ourselves for Dara. So thank you for that. So Dara, as you know, we have folks on the line here, first generation American citizens, first generation college grads. Like these are people who have faced big challenges and overcome them and figured out a way to thrive, no matter where the starting point was, which we at BreakLine think is amazing. And Katie Smith has a question related to that type of pathway in life, one of transcendence and just figuring it out and getting to where you need to be. And you're an amazing example of that. And she says, what challenges have you encountered being a woman in a leadership role, a C-suite role at a tech company? And what skills helped you overcome those challenges?
That's a good question, but you could even ask, what challenges have I not encountered?
Yeah.
I think it's hard. It's hard being a woman. It's especially hard being a woman of color. I would say it's actually, to be honest, what I've encountered more as challenging, to be honest, has been more around being a person of color than being a woman. I feel like the gender discussion, we're definitely not where we need to be from a gender perspective. People are more open though to the gender conversation, and people like to talk about the gender conversation. Tell you how to make a room full of executives passionate about diversity and inclusion go silent real quick. Bring up race real quick. Nobody has any thoughts anymore. And so, I faced a lot of challenges as a woman and reality as a woman of color. And I would say sort of three key things, challenges that I faced. And as I talk about the challenges, I'll talk about how I navigate them, because I'm still on the journey, so I'm still navigating them. One of them is around what I like to call the overcompensation complex. To get to where I've had to be much better than, a lot of the other people around me. And I'm just some random kid from Nigeria. My dad doesn't know anybody. My dad doesn't golf with any venture capitalists. Like, nobody's looking out for Dara. Like, all the relationships I have built have been built, by myself with the grace of God and perseverance. And so I just come from such a different perspective that I've had to really overcompensate. Now, what happens when you finally have the seat at the table? What got you where I always say, what got you where you are isn't what's going to get you where you need to go. So now I'm here. Now I'm a C-level executive in Silicon Valley. This is not my first time being a C-level executive. I'm not, this is who I am now. But I'm still trying to overcompensate. And that's not always the right way to go about doing things, because sometimes I make people shut down, and I've had to learn, how do I modulate? How do I adjust my approach? Because at the end of the day, I have to build allies. I can't do it all by myself. And so I've got to rethink how I approach different situations. And I think that's something that's applicable to us at every area of our lives, right? What got us where we are isn't what's going to get us to the next level. So how do you adapt your style to your new environment, right? How do you adapt your style to your new environment to build allies? And I think that's an important thing, regardless, at every level. Even my husband, who is a veteran, and he's a straight white man, wonderful, a true ally. But even in his work, this applies to him too. And he thinks about it as well. Because you have to, even going from the military to working in Silicon Valley, like, he had to adapt his style, right? I remember when I walked into his office one day, and there was a woman on the team, and she kept making all these comments about how she's so happy there's another woman to use the women's bathroom. And when we got home that night, I said to him, I know you're a very small company, but like, you really need to think about diversity and inclusion. And he had to adapt his style to get everybody on board. And now, their national security company, and they're like 40% women, which is amazing. It's way higher than like the industry average. But like, you have to learn how to adapt your style. That was the first challenge I faced and how I dealt with it. The second one was really around finding my voice and using it. I used to, you have a seat at the table, now talk. and I had to kind of find my voice. And the reason I say you have to find your voice is, if you talk about everything, you talk about nothing. So you need to figure out, what are you going to be known for? And this matters at every stage of your life, right? Whether or not you think you have a brand, you have a brand. What is your brand? Your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. That's your brand, and people are going to say something about you when you're not in the room. So you can either think, I need to be thoughtful about how I craft this. And if I'm not happy with what people are saying about me when I leave the room, how do I change that? And so for me, it's been finding my voice, is figuring out, okay, what are the things that I want to be known for? And then how do I channel that, and how do I speak up about those issues and those things? And so it's interesting, and it's been a journey. I've learned a lot. There's a guy on my leadership team who he used to annoy me, because he would always make comments, and his comments always sounded so great, and everybody always loved his comments, but I always felt like he wasn't saying a whole lot, but like, he would just kind of summarize what people were saying, but everybody loved it. And like, it's like our CEO loves it, and he's like her person. And I remember I was kind of hating a little bit, if I'm just being honest. I'm just like, oh my God, like, oh, here he is again, another nothing statement. And I was talking to, this is a nice thing, I'm having many women in our leadership team. I was talking to my girlfriend on our leadership team, and we're like laughing about it. But she said something really profound. She was like, you know what, he always sounds like a CEO. And I was like, girl, you are right. Like, he always sounds like a CEO. He's able to, his comments will always start with like, what if we just take a step back for a minute? And, and he would just pull it all together. So guess what? I was like, don't hate the player, hate the game. And I started to use that to frame my conversations. And I'm not saying nothing. I actually have something to say. But I took what he was doing and I started using that. And all of a sudden, it's like I had been trying to break through on some issues and I was starting to break through. So when I say find your voice and use it, it's about finding your voice, but it's also about learning from the people around you. And sometimes, those people that annoy you, those might be the people you really need to learn from. Because I found that whenever someone rubs me off the wrong way and I check a little bit of it, there's maybe a little bit of jealousy and they're like, oh, why does he always have to be the one? So I can learn something from those people. And so I think that's the second one that the challenge that I found and I faced, because I always worry that, I'm so passionate, I could come across too much. How do I say it? What do I say? And so just really learning how to find my voice and use it has been immensely helpful to me. And then the third and final area, and of course there was a long list of challenges, but I'm trying to be concise as much as I can. Be concision is not a strength of mine. But the third and final point is really around community. And when you're the only one, and I'm still the only one, the only Black person on our leadership team, in fact, director and above at my company, I'm the only Black person. And yes, I'm working to change that. But like, as a Black woman and as the only one, there's a lot of, it can feel very lonely. It can feel very like I remember Black History Month and I was like, I am not going to do a thing for Black History Month. Like I had stood up our people of color, ERG, Employee Resource Group. And I was like, I had hinted it to our people team. I dropped little nuggets, but I was like, I don't want to be the one to have to champion it this year. And I had to champion it this year. Like, and I remember, because it was like February was going and I was like, Black History Month is about to be over. What are we doing for Black History Month? And the ERG then, they wanted a sponsor. So I sponsored them and they did a lot of amazing work there. But it felt hard. It felt like, okay, why do I have to be the one speaking on this issue or pushing this issue? Another thing was Veterans Day, right? We had made a decision that Veterans Day was not going to be a public holiday for our company. And I brought that up and talked about that because, my husband, even though I'm not a veteran, my husband's a veteran. We have veterans in the company. And I wanted to make sure that we were thinking about it in the right way. And so, I say that to say it can be very isolating. And I think it's really important to build your tribe. Some people call it your personal board of directors, whatever you want to call it. But these are the people that you can go to, and they shouldn't all be the same, right? Some of them are going to be peers. Some of them are going to be mentors. Some of them are going to be sponsors. And it's important to differentiate between a sponsor and a mentor. A mentor has the time to spend with you. A sponsor does not. But what a sponsor has is they can lend their credibility to you. So they can lend, because they're in rooms that you're not in, and they can lend their credibility to help you, but they might not have the time to get to know you as well as a mentor. Like when I look at my tribe, I've got like a mom on my tribe and she's actually like a stay-at-home mom, but like, I want to be a better mother and I learn a lot from her. I've got a woman who's a CEO and on boards of directors on my tribe, because one day I want to be a CEO and I want to learn from that. And so I've got different facets of my life. So I also think when you think about it, don't only think about it from the professional standpoint, but also think about it from the personal standpoint and make sure that you have a group of people that can kind of support you as you go, because it can be a lonely walk. It can be challenging, and having people, your support network is really important to get through it.
Dara, what a treat to spend the last hour with you. Thank you so much for the time. Huge, huge hugs over to you virtually, and so appreciate you being willing to carve out this time this morning for us, and particularly for the BreakLine Mavens. Thank you so much, Dara.
Of course. Thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Stay safe and healthy. Have a great weekend.